Hey, everybody. Ever wonder what it takes to be a leader? Is it charisma? Is it power? Is it brains? Well, today we're going to meet a woman who had all of these things in spades and more. Join us as we look at the story of Deborah, the fiercest prophetess who led her people to victory over their oppressors. This is Deborah, the fierce prophetess leading Israel to victory. Deborah was born into oppression. She was a judge in a time when Israel was enslaved by the Canaanite king Jabin. For 20 years, Jabin's general Sisera had oppressed the Israelites with an iron fist. But Deborah knew that God was on the side of his people, and she was determined to lead them to freedom. When the time was right, Deborah called for help, and Barak, a young warrior from the tribe of Naphtali, answered her call. Together, they led Israel's army to victory against the Canaanites. And not only did they win the war, but they also gained newfound respect and independence. Deborah was a true leader. She was brave, intelligent, and compassionate. She understood the hearts of her people, and she knew how to motivate them to take action. She was also a skilled military strategist and tactician, and she used her skills to defeat the Canaanites. But Deborah's leadership went beyond the battlefield. She was a judge, which in those days meant that she was responsible for settling disputes between members of her community. She was also a prophetess, and she used her position to speak out against injustice and oppression. She was a true champion of the people, and she never gave up on them, even when all hope seemed to be lost. Now, if you want to learn more about this amazing woman and the incredible impact she had on her community, stay tuned, because we're just getting started. In today's video, we're going to explore Deborah's life story and legacy. We will discuss her rise to power, her achievements, and the lessons we can learn from her today. So grab a snack, sit back, and get ready to be inspired by the story of Deborah, the fearless prophetess who led her people to victory. Deborah was a prophetess, a judge, and a military leader. She was one of the most influential figures in the Old Testament, and she is a role model for women in leadership positions today. Deborah's story is one of courage, faith, and determination. She was a woman who lived in a time when women were not allowed to hold leadership positions, but she broke the mold and became a judge, a military leader, and a deliverer of her people. So let's dive into the book of Judges, chapters 4 and 5, where Deborah's story unfolds before our eyes. Deborah was a prophetess who delivered Israel from the oppression of King Jabin of Canaan. She is revered as a champion of justice and liberation, and her story continues to inspire people around the world today. The story of Deborah begins in a time when the Israelites were living under the oppressive rule of the Canaanite, King Jabin. For 20 years, Jabin's general Sisera had oppressed the Israelites, and they cried out to God for help. God heard their cries and raised up Deborah as a judge to deliver them. Now, Deborah wasn't just any judge. She was a prophetess, which meant that she had a special connection to God and the ability to speak on his behalf. She also had a strong personality and a fierce determination to fight for justice. When Deborah learned that Sisera and his Canaanite army were camped in the valley of the Kishon, she summoned Barak, a young warrior from the tribe of Naphtali, and told him that God had given him a mission to lead Israel as army to victory over the Canaanites. At first, Barak was hesitant to accept the mission. He was young and inexperienced, and he was afraid of the Canaanite army. But Deborah encouraged him to trust in God and to believe in his ability to lead. She promised him that God would be with him and that he would prevail over his enemies. And so Barak, inspired by Deborah's faith and determination, accepted the mission and assembled an army. Together, they marched to the valley of the Kishon to face the Canaanites. Now, the battle was fierce and intense, but ultimately the Israelites prevailed and the Canaanites were defeated. Sisera, the Canaanite general, was killed and the Israelites were free from oppression. After the battle, Deborah and Barak led the Israelites in a celebration of their victory. They sang songs of praise to God and celebrated their newfound freedom. Deborah, in particular, was celebrated as a hero of the day. Her courage, faith, and determination had inspired the Israelites to victory, and she was revered as a champion of justice and liberation. In the book of Judges, chapter 5, verse 24, the Israelites are described as saying, "When Deborah was dead, Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the gods of Canaan." Despite the victory, the Israelites quickly fell back into their old ways, and they began to worship the gods of the Canaanites. This shows the Israelites were unfaithful and disobedient people, and they were constantly in need of a Savior. It also highlights the importance of Deborah's leadership and the lasting impact she had on her community. Even after her death, her legacy continued to inspire and guide the people of Israel. Deborah's story is a reminder that God can and does use ordinary people like you and me to accomplish extraordinary things. She was a woman who lived in a time when women were not allowed to hold leadership positions. But she broke the mold and became a judge, a military leader, and a deliverer of her people. She was a woman of courage, faith, and determination, and her story continues to inspire people around the world today. If you feeling inspired by Deborah's story and want to learn more about other amazing women in the Bible, we've got you covered. Check out our video on the 10 most powerful women in the Bible for a closer look at some of the most influential women in biblical history. You won't want to miss it. As we continue our exploration of Deborah's story, it's important to remember that she wasn't perfect. Like all of us, she had strengths and weaknesses, and she made mistakes along the way. However, despite her flaws, she remained steadfast in her commitment to God and her people. One of Deborah's greatest strengths was her ability to listen to the concerns of her people and to fight for their rights. She was a champion of the poor and oppressed, and she used her position as a judge to help those who were in need. In Judges chapter 12, verse 11, we read that in those days Israel had no king. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This verse highlights the fact that Deborah's leadership was particularly significant because during this time period, there was no centralized government in Israel, and each person was left to do what was right in his or her own eyes. Deborah's leadership provided a much-needed sense of guidance and direction for the people of Israel. Another one of Deborah's strengths was her ability to see the bigger picture. She understood the long-term implications of the decisions that she made, and she was willing to make tough choices in order to secure a better future for her people. This was particularly evident during the battle against the Canaanites, where Deborah's strategic thinking and military leadership played a key role in securing victory for the Israelites. However, Deborah was not without her weaknesses. In Judges chapter 13, verse 6, we read that, "And the angel of the Lord came up and said to her, 'Why have you lied to me?'" This verse suggests that Deborah may have been prone to deception or dishonesty at times. Nevertheless, despite her flaws, Deborah remained committed to serving God and her people. She was a woman of integrity and courage who was willing to confront difficult situations head-on. As we reflect on Deborah's strengths and weaknesses, we can learn valuable lessons that can help us in our own lives. We can strive to be like Deborah in her commitment to justice, her ability to see the bigger picture, and her willingness to make tough decisions. At the same time, we can also learn from her weaknesses and strive to be honest and transparent in our dealings with others. So if you are feeling inspired by Deborah's story and want to learn more about the amazing women in the Bible, be sure to check out our video on the 10 most powerful women in the Bible for a closer look at some of the most influential women in biblical history. You won't want to miss it. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more daily videos. And don't forget to share your thoughts and comments below. We love hearing from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.